I'm at a dinner table with The Undertaker, Midian, Maven, The Godfather. After a few glasses of wine, Mark was on the other side of the table, and he's just holding court and telling stories. And we were like hanging on every single word. And I'm like, how is any of this happening?
Well, look who it is. How the tables have turned.
What world are we living in?
I don't know.
Where I'm the guest on your show.
I love it.
This is crazy.
I love it. Well, welcome, first of all, to Behind the Turnbuckle.
Yeah, congrats on all your success with it as well.
Thank you. I'm literally following in your footsteps on how we do the interview thing, how we put it out. And so I thought it'd be great to utilize this time to interview you instead of me just being on your show for I think a record fourth time.
Yes, and thank you for that. And people can go check that out on my YouTube channel and go check out the other ones. Thank you for the kind words. I would pick someone who's a little more successful, though, if you want to have the blueprint.
Okay, we know that's not true because you're humble, but that's where we're going to start. Because wherever I go now and whatever I talk about, whether it's Behind the Turnbuckle and we do our interviews, we've had Cody Rhodes and DDP, I always kind of come back to Insight because you've really, the last year and a half, exploded into this new world. What would you say, as we just get started, has been the secret from what you were doing, let's say 3 years ago, to now these two channels that have billions of views and that you're getting every single person seemingly that's out there?
I went all in on it. And I started treating my podcast like it was a real job. So if I was employed I used to work at the Fox affiliate in Miami. If I used to work for the CBS affiliate in Cleveland. I treated this like it was my job. And that, I think, was the biggest difference. A lot of people treat their podcast or the YouTube channel like it's this side gig, right? And if you treat it like it's a side gig, it will start to make income and, be like a side gig for you. I went all in on it. And it changed last year when WrestleMania was here in Los Angeles. I was doing 2 episodes a week, which I now do 3 episodes a week, but 2 interviews a week. Sometimes it would be a wrestler, but sometimes it would be an actor or an athlete or a comedian or an entrepreneur, people that I was interested in just learning from.
Right.
And last year when WrestleMania came to LA, I went, what if I could bank a whole bunch of wrestling interviews so that we could go a whole month of just back to back to back wrestling interviews? And I did. I banked 14 interviews at WrestleMania 39 when it was in LA. So all of April was wrestling interviews, and it ended up being my most listened to month ever. I went, okay, well, let's see if we can keep this going. May, I did the same thing. And then May was bigger than April. And then I did the same thing in June, and that was bigger than May. And that just kept going, right? It just kept building on itself. So it was the consistency. The biggest thing for any content creator is consistency. The more that you keep showing up, the more your audience will keep showing up. And I think it's important to point out that my YouTube channel is 13 years old. Okay.
See, that is important. Everybody thinks that happens overnight.
I know. I started my YouTube channel in February of 2011.
Wow.
And all I was doing at that point in time was just putting these raw interviews from different wrestlers or actors or comedians on my YouTube channel because I was working for a TV station. We were doing these interviews with massive names. And unless you were watching Channel 19 at exactly 4:14
that's right,
that Thursday afternoon, you would never see the interview. And if you didn't live in Cleveland, right? So I was like, well, some other Jennifer Lawrence fan, Sylvester Stallone fan, whoever fan, Steven Spielberg fan, is The Rock, whatever, they're going to like this. So what if I just put this on YouTube? They can find that if they're looking for it, but otherwise at least gets to live somewhere. Some of those started building a little bit of traction, but the YouTube channel started 13 years ago. The podcast started 5. We're coming up on 5.5 years now.
It's so funny because I tell people all the time, we have like 8 or 9 guys in my 2 brands that I do now that basically we work for free for the first several months on purpose as you build, because you never want to take the little things until you build it up. And I always refer to the Cat Williams interview on Club Shay Shay because Shannon Sharp said, I've been doing this show for 5 years. I had no idea it existed before that interview. So it takes like that one viral thing or that one thing to get popular. Do you remember which interview it was that you said to yourself when you started getting that love and all those flowers, you said, this is the avenue that I should go down?
I think it's a series of it's a lot of little steps, right? It's a lot of little bricks along the way that end up, building the house or whatever this dumb analogy is going to be. But I think it's like I had an opportunity to talk to The Miz really early on when the CM Punk pipe bomb stuff was happening. Miz was throwing out the first pitch for the Cleveland Indians. I went on the field, did like a 5-minute interview with him, asked him a question about CM Punk's pipe bomb, and he gave me a quote about that. The next day I woke up and this interview had like 30,000 views. And I was like, what? I had like 16 subscribers. Like,
Right.
how did this happen? One of them being my mom. And then
Solid.
right? But I realized that someone had taken that quote and shared it on various wrestling websites and they linked to my video. And I'm like, oh, we're on to something here. That was the first kind of clue of like, if I can get access to these people and they talk about something that might be newsworthy, those videos can maybe continue to grow. There was another one when Chris Jericho signed with AEW, and I was the first interview that he did. And people will remember we sat in the backseat of his car.
That's right. That's right.
And he was a WWE guy through and through. And he said he would never leave WWE. And then he had this opportunity to build this new thing with Tony Khan and AEW, and we chatted about it. And what people don't know is I drove 5 hours to meet him in a parking lot. He was doing a live podcast in Ocala, Florida. I drove from South Florida all the way there. Drove 5 hours to do a 20-minute interview with him, and then got in my car and turned right around. Got my buddy to drive my car because I was sitting there on my laptop and editing the video so I could get it up as quickly as possible. So there were a lot of little things along the way. That video ended up getting a lot of views, and I'm super grateful to Chris Jericho for even giving me the opportunity and saying, yeah, sure, I'll do this interview with you. But there's a lot of those little ones along the way that made me go, all right, instead of me talking to The Rock when he's promoting a movie or Dave Bautista when he's promoting a movie, what if I were to talk to this wrestler who's in town for an indie show? Or what if I were to go to this convention that's 2 hours away and there's a few big names there? What if I could get one of them to say yes to do an interview with me? Even if it's only a few minutes, what if I could get one of them to say yes? And if I got that yes, I would do anything I could to get in the building, find some sort of credentials to be able to even talk to them. And I just started taking any opportunity I could to just squeeze my way into the door.
When I watch you and I see, I follow you on everything, and we're obviously good friends, but a lot of fans that sit at home that I say sit on the sidelines, they go, I could do that. I could do that. They see the finished product. You just described 10 hours for 20 minutes because of your passion to get this done and the fact that you don't want to have a regular job anymore. You don't want to be at Channel 19 in Cleveland making $42,000 a year. But now that you've got to the point where I'm never surprised at who you say, hey, this is going to be the next guy. It could be the biggest star. It could be a mid-level guy. It could be an indie star.
Oh, I'm always surprised. Oh, yeah.
Well,
I'm always surprised when I can get someone to say yes.
But now it seems like you get everybody.
But there's still a lot of people who either just say straight up no.
Really?
Or they just won't get
They won't get back to you?
Message back. Yeah.
That's
okay.
See, that's what's so funny, because I was a talent inside of the WWE, so I was always on the other side of being interviewed, even though I was an analyst, so to speak. And I remember when it really kind of started, and we would openly discuss, I would never go talk to the dirt sheet guys.
Yeah.
So you're kind of responsible for taking the dirt sheet guys and turning it into this is grade A level. This is where everybody should strive to be. How important is that production value and making sure that it's excellent so that because all the talent, they watch those interviews, and that's why you get the other guys too.
Well, look, we all live with a supercomputer in our pocket, right? Like, we're all sitting here at some point during the day, swiping on Instagram, swiping on TikTok, right? If my face can pop up there at some point during the week, then we're doing something right. And I understand that if I send you a link for an interview that's an hour and 27 minutes, and I go, man, you gotta watch this interview, it's so good. It's an hour and 27 minutes. Pretty good chance you're not gonna click on that link.
Right.
But if I send you a clip from that same video, or same interview, and that video's 41 seconds, man, you're probably gonna watch that. And if you like that enough, maybe you'll go find another clip. Maybe you'll go find another clip, and then maybe you'll go and find the full interview. I like to think of these vertical videos, so we're talking shorts or reels or TikToks, as breadcrumbs. So they're just the tiny little breadcrumbs. Super easy to consume a 30, 60-second video, right? If you like that breadcrumb enough, hopefully you'll go looking for a piece of bread, which is the longer 2 to 5 to 7 minute clips, which you see on my clips channel. If you really like that slice of bread, hopefully you go looking for the loaf of bread, which is the full podcast, the full interview. That's kind of how we've broken this down. So I think that just getting these clips out, it to as many people as we can. You know, the John Cena interview, it was an hour and 13 minutes. I think we made 45 clips from it.
I remember there were a lot.
Yeah.
But that takes time.
Of course.
For people who don't understand how those are made, if you just sit at home and you use CapCut or something, I mean, it is monotonous. Thank God I don't have to do it. But how did you get into a workflow where you can make those 45 clips and not spend a week doing it?
So up until 2 years, I did it all. So I was editing all of the interviews, and I was wearing a lot of different hats. And yeah, I know how to edit video, but I'm not a great video editor by any means. I'm like a 6 out of 10. So I was like, what if I could hire someone who's actually a professional video editor, a 10 out of 10, who could not only do this way better than me, but do it in like a fraction of the time. And I started working with a video editor. I now work with a guy named Troy Blair, who I truly believe is the best vertical video editor on the planet. Not just wrestling editor, but just best vertical video editor on the planet. And this is actually a great story for anybody who's an aspiring editor or aspiring creator. He just sent me a cold email, and he was like, hey, you have some great content. I actually think I could make your content even better. And I was working with somebody at the time, and I emailed Troy back, and I basically said, like, thanks, but no thanks. And he's like, in the email, he had sent me a sample of his work. And I thought, wow, he actually like took the initiative to spend the time, not even knowing if I would answer this email or not, but he took the time to edit this video and show me what he was capable of. And the video he sent me was pretty good. About a week later, I was like, what if I reach out to him and just give him a chance? And I was like, your stuff's pretty good. Like, why don't you make me like 10 videos? So, all right, 10 videos would cost this much money. I said, great, let's give that a try. And they were awesome. And they generated more views than the current company I was working with. And we kind of took off from there. But the reason that I think our Clips channel just had 1 billion views.
It's ridiculous.
On YouTube. I owe so much of this to just a great team of people that are far smarter than I am, that have an eye for like, oh, that's going to be a good piece of content. Let's run with that.
It's funny because as I lead my own group now, and we're a little bit different than what you do, but I'm learning that I have to have good people around me.
Yeah.
If I want to scale up to the point where you're making the amount of money where you can survive and you don't have to make it a side gig. And you also have to trust those people that they're going to get the work done.
Yeah.
And I've been very fortunate too, because a lot of our people reached out to me cold. Can you have imagined, let's say 15 years ago, 2010, 2009, and we're talking about editing vertical video. And we're like, what the hell is that? And I think that's one of the biggest things, and I don't know if it's frustrated you or why you tried to do your own thing and your own boss now, is that a lot of the big networks that I've been at, a lot of the executives never change. They never think outside the box. They don't evolve with the times. And now you have to, or else podcasts at a network can't work.
Yeah.
And I think now you're more the standard than, say, at a network level. Do you feel that shift changing?
We're definitely at a crossroads right now. Yeah. And I think that there's still this misunderstanding that that TV screens are the main screen that we watch. This is the main screen that all of us watch. Like, this is the main screen. Is my daughter on there? Oh yeah, she is on there. That's the main screen that we're watching. And so if people are watching content on their phone first, we've started making content so you can consume it on your phone first. So we'll go into these interviews for Insight that are an hour and a half long, but we're also thinking like, okay, as we're going into this interview, that could probably be a clip. Okay, great. That could probably be a clip. That could be a clip. And we're kind of reverse engineering the process of like, yes, we have the long form video that's an hour and a half or whatever that is, which is obviously going to go on the podcast as well. How many clips can we make out of that? Because the percentage of people that are going to consume the entire piece of that content are
small, right?
Small.
Yeah.
But it's been so cool how many people have come up to me, like big name people that are like, I know you. I know your work. Like, what?
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Because when I was there, and it wasn't until well after I left WWE full time, that they owned us, meaning we had to get permission for everything. A lot of your early interviews were at press junkets, where guys would just go one. You get 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or whatever it is. Do you remember a time where the WWE started saying, we trust you, because it happened with us on our show when Cody Rhodes walked into an interview with DDP, sat down for 30 minutes, and a part of it because he knew we had worked together, but also he didn't have to check with the bosses anymore.
Yeah.
Was there a shift? And do you remember the big interview you got where you're like, oh, this isn't a press junket anymore, and this is just because of me?
Yeah. It was last year. Like this has only happened relatively recently. So I freelance for the CBS station in Las Vegas, KLAS, and I put movie junkets on there and some celebrity interviews on there a few times a month. Royal Rumble was about to happen, and I just shot in the dark, sent them an email. I said, hey, is there anybody who's doing any sort of press for the Royal Rumble? We'd love to air it on KLAS. And I was not expecting to get a response. And they said, yeah, we've got LA Night available tomorrow. And I went, sign me up then. Okay. This is incredible. Because there was a long time in WWE where they would only give you access if it was going to air on TV or the radio.
Really?
So if this was going to be on the podcast or YouTube channel, even if it was going to get 500,000 views or 1 million views, they wanted those call letters there. So I was like, all right, well, what if we put it on TV, call letters, and I'll put the full interview on my YouTube channel as well. And they were like, yeah, LA Night's available. I'm like, oh my gosh, I know Sean. He's a great guy. Sean, this is his real name. I know him. So this is even like better, tying everything together. That was, I think, when things really started to shift. And if you listen to the press conferences now that they do after all the WWE PLEs, it's not entirely Sports Illustrated or CBS or Fox that's in there. WWE is starting to realize that eyeballs are eyeballs.
Yeah.
And if that's coming on a website or it's coming on a YouTube channel or from a podcast, they all count. So I think that they've just, with the new regime change there, and I don't know this for a fact, but from the outside looking in, it sure seems like they're valuing that, like, these audiences already exist there. Let's tap into that a little bit.
I think also you're seeing when networks say, all right, I want to pay this person $500,000. There was a stretch a few years ago where the WWE didn't allow Twitch, and you had all this talent that's making all this money, and they had to decide between their deal with the WWE or do I keep my Twitch channel going? And it's really cool to see that that's kind of shifting just a little bit. But when you talk about shifting, how you're perceived in particular, because I know recently you were, and I want you to tell me how you got it done and then how it flipped, kind of what we're doing, where you interviewed The Undertaker, who has one of the top 5 podcasts in wrestling, I think that's category.
They're crushing it.
Yeah. But guess who has number 1? You do.
Yeah.
And so when that situation happened, and I know how he'll interview, he'll do like 4 episodes at a time, and that's probably the easier way of doing it. Yeah. How did that situation happen? And then when he said, oh, and Chris, we want to interview you for ours, and you can do Taker, that had to be crazy.
That whole day was crazy. All of that was crazy. So I did an interview with The Undertaker last summer. He was bringing the One Dead Man show to Las Vegas. So it's like, perfect. We can air this on the TV station there. And then I've got this 20-minute interview with The Undertaker that we put on the podcast and the YouTube channel. At the end of the interview, he goes, we should run this back again sometime. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, and I'm a man of my word. And I'm like, okay. So like he actually means it. And then I think the next day or the day after, I saw that he was following me back on Twitter. I was like, oh, damn. Like he meant it. So I just shot him a quick DM and I said, hey, thanks so much. Looking forward to running it back with you sometime. And then maybe like 6 months later, I sent him another DM. Hey, I'd love to get you on the show. And he didn't read it. Then his podcast co-host, Matt Lyda, who's awesome, shot me a message and said, hey, we're putting together some merch for the Undertaker's podcast, 6 Feet Under with Mark Calloway. Can I send you some t-shirts? I said, absolutely. Here's my address. Yeah, absolutely. And then he goes, and we're thinking about getting some people on the show, and we'd love to have you on the show. And I'm like, what? I'm reading this DM, and I'm like, me?
You couldn't believe it.
On his show?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, what would you think about you being a guest on our show and then you could do an interview with Mark afterwards?
Perfect.
What?
Wow.
He's like, yeah, we're thinking about like first week of whatever month it was in Austin. I'm like, I will be available. Like, I'll get on a plane right now, anytime. So yeah, I was a guest on his show, which was crazy. And you're just shooting the breeze with the Undertaker and Matt Lydon. Like, you're just hanging out, which was so cool. After that, we were like, all right, so should we film the interview here? Because they rent the studio in Austin. Should we do it here? Should we do it at your house? Like, he's like, oh, I don't care. Undertaker's like, whatever's best for you. I'm like, no. Like, whatever's most convenient for you.
For you.
He goes, yeah, we'll shoot it at the house. We'll shoot it at the house. So since our interview's done here, we've also got Midian and we've got The Godfather, and then we got another interview that we're doing. I'll probably be done here about 4. Why don't you head over to my place? I'll give you the address. Why don't you head up there? Go into the gym. When you roll up to the property, the gym's on the right-hand side of the property. Just go in there, set up, and I'll join you there after. Here's my phone number.
What?
In case you get lost. And I'm like, how is any of this happening? Like, I'm doing an interview with The Undertaker at his house, and he's giving me his phone number in case I get lost. This is all crazy. So sure enough, roll up to his house, beautiful house on a massive property. His gym is insane, by the way. Oh, it's incredible. We set up there and we were just like waiting for him to walk in. Sure enough, he walks in and sat down. I said, do you have a time that we need to be wrapped up by? And he's like, he'll never forget it. He goes, yeah, just keep asking me questions so you get all the bullshit out of me. And we talked for almost 2 hours. And it was just so cool. And you know The Undertaker.
Sure.
What a good guy.
He really is. I think people don't realize how good of a guy he is.
Yes.
And also he's a perfect example of and not a lot is talked, and for obvious reasons with the whole Vince situation, but I cannot even have fathomed 15 years ago, when podcasts were starting, that the character of The Undertaker, which was so incredibly guarded.
Yeah.
You never saw a picture of Mark in an airport. He never took pictures. And I was very critical of the Wyatt Six recently for, you got this huge buildup and then you're taking a picture at Whataburger. What are we doing, right? And I use Undertaker as an example. I was like, this never would have happened in his prime. But he and Stone Cold and these guys have now figured out, they're in their 50s. How do I still stay relevant? How do I stay relevant to the wrestling fans? How do I make a really nice chunk of change? And I think they enjoy talking about their careers. Did you get that feeling?
Yeah, and he's just such a great storyteller. Like, that at the core of it, that's the best thing about it. And he has 35 years of stories that he never got to tell. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing is, once you get him going,
he'll go.
He goes.
Yeah.
And after that interview, we all went out to dinner, which was wild. So I'm at dinner and Maven was there too, because he recorded an episode with Maven the next day. So I'm at a dinner table with The Undertaker, Midian, Maven, The Godfather, and a few other people. And after a few glasses of wine and after we had eaten the steaks and they were so good, he's just holding court. Like, there was a point towards the end of the night where we were all gathered on one side of the table and Mark was on the other side of the table and he's just like holding court and telling stories. And we were like hanging on every single word. And I think it's the fact that he has 35 years of these stories that he's only told to the boys. And now he's able to tell maybe the PG version of those stories on his podcast or when he's a guest on other shows. It's just such a legend. And I love that for as famous as he is, as legendary as he is, he's also that great of a human as well.
He was always the guy that, and I've had 3 or 4 really cool Undertaker experiences, I call them. And I don't know if you've ever heard the story about whenever you talk about The Godfather, who is actually, do you know The Godfather is 63 years old, by the way?
No way.
Yes. Yes, I recently did a movie with him, and he told me he was 63. I was like, what are we
looks
doing?
Great.
Amazing,
Yeah.
right? And he was always, his character was always the guy, and he had the girls, and Taker couldn't be that. But we always called Taker the Godfather. And if Taker wanted something done, it was going to get done. And I don't know if you ever heard this story, but we went through a phase where management wanted us all at a certain weight. Okay, so we were all going to get weighed in on a Monday, and you're much younger than I am, but we had a restaurant in New York called WWF New York.
I remember it.
Okay, and we would have a talent there doing live shots on Monday Night Raw. So it just so happened that particular week, the Big Show was in New York and not in the building where we were getting. So all of a sudden, somebody comes and goes, "Hey, Coach, Undertaker needs to see you." So I go in and I said, "What do you need?" He goes, "Hey, I want you to write a pool up for me." I said, "A pool?" He goes, "Yeah, we're going to guess the Big Show's weight." And I said, "We are?" He said, "Yep." So the Undertaker ran a pool. I collected the money, $10 a person. I kid you not, $630. And you had to guess. And some people were like really thinking about it, 380, 390, 400. Jeff Hardy, I remember, guessed 1,219 pounds. And so Big Show was flying in the next day for SmackDown, because back then it was Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah.
And so where the scale was, all these people are hanging out in the hallway, right? And so Big Show walks around the corner. He's looking around like, why are all these people in the hallway? So he walks in, and like your ears to the door. And Undertaker is just kind of back doing his own thing. We were so excited. And I'll never forget, it was 484 pounds. And if there's one person that you don't want winning a pool like that, would there be a name that would pop into your head? One person that you would not want to have that information, to win, to rub it in forever. Who do you think that would be?
I don't know. Who?
I got 3 letters for you. J, B, L. I kid you not.
Did he guess it right on?
Yeah, he had to be spot on. He guessed it right on the number,
Wow.
484. And they actually, remember they made that, they had that series where it was like they made stories into cartoons.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
So this is one of those stories, right? And so I was interviewed for it. I was already at ESPN, but they called and had me come down and be interviewed for it.
Yeah.
And so the next week we were in St. Louis, and JBL took the $630, and there's this bar called In Cahoots. It's a country western bar around the country. They had one there. So we put the word out, hey, everybody meet in Cahoots. He walks in. He's got 63 $10 bills or whatever. He slams it down the bar, and he says, "Bartender, $1 anything on Fridays, I might add.
Oh, my gosh.
Bartender, we're drinking until this is gone." And it bought over 600 drinks
Oh,
for like
my
the 40.
gosh.
Yeah. And the Undertaker was the instigator in all of that.
What a story.
That's the world we lived in. And so
Yeah.
everybody was like, he was always up here.
Yeah.
But yet he always could be a part of the boys.
Yeah.
And that's how he was kind of different than Stone Cold.
He was in kayfabe for his whole career. They always say you shouldn't meet your heroes. But if your hero's Dwayne Johnson, you should do whatever you can. There's other times where it gives me the middle finger on live TV. I thought I was going to be a father for the first time. I said to my wife, here's a chance to get like a really unique interview moment with The Rock.